Hey, world. Jeremiah, what it do? Good game, boy. Hey, world. Being when it coming back live in the garden. Come back with a little information. Texas, Alabama. What it do, now? Marcus, what's up now? That's a good question, Texas, Alabama. Might look into that one. You got to catch me up on it as well. I'm going to come back with a little information tonight. DJ in the house. That title, man, the bank bailout. I don't know if you guys even know about that, but we're going to get into it. Get into a little tax information. It's important that you know what your tax information is as far as your deductions and as far as what this new tax bill, how it's going to affect you. We'll get into that too. I'm buffering. They added again, I see. Wait a couple minutes to see if the buffering is going to get up out of here. I don't know what that's about. They must have seen that title. I don't think they want that they don't want that information. They don't want that food for thought to get out tonight if I'm buffering. So we're gonna get into it right quick. Everyone, it's being able to come back live in the garden. I just want to come back with that information tonight. I hope I'm not buffering too bad. But I want to kind of get into this because I think it's important that when we understand, you know, the real news from the fake news, all this alien talk, all this stuff they're talking about, the different protests that's going on in Hong Kong, the stuff that's going on with China, all that stuff don't mean anything if you don't really know what's going on here right now. And I talk about the banking system and how if you don't understand the banking system, you get caught up. Family, right now, the Federal Reserve Bank is pretty much bailing out the banks again with what they call a repo. And if you haven't heard about it, family, that's the thing. This whole Federal Reserve and a repo situation is crazy. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, first of all, you got to understand that the Federal Reserve, AA Black Pistol, what it do? First of all, you got to understand, family, the Federal Reserve isn't a part of the federal government. It's not a governmental agency, all right? And so when you have a country of over 300 million people that don't understand that the Federal Reserve is just basically a central bank that's over our monetary and fiscal policies, over printing money, over who gets bailed out for these companies and who don't, all right? It's equivalent to if you didn't get a chance to check out my video about the United States corporations on United States, then you would have seen what I'm talking about in reference to foreign companies or foreign countries rather, you know, owning and basically having most of these United States corporations. All right. And so when you understand that the Federal Reserve is not a part of the United States, and then you hear that they basically just bailing out the banks, what I mean by that, if you didn't know what happened in 2007, 2008 during that big recession, the big crisis in 2007, 2008, well, the federal government and the Federal Reserve, quote unquote, bailed out a lot of the banks, a lot of the big banks. They call them banks that are too big to fail. where there were billions and billions of dollars, not only the banks, but also the auto industry, where the American public, taxpayers, paid billions and billions of dollars to bail out these banks that had all these bad mortgages that uh, basically almost went bankrupt. But since they were part of the big corporation in America, they got bailed out. Now, that was big news back in 2007, 2008. Now, what's happening is that the Federal Reserve is bailing out banks by something what they call a repo. Now, if you know, not the repo that you think of, where if you don't pay your bills, or you don't pay your car note, they'll come and repossess your car. Not that kind of repo. It's called a repurchase. And why do banks need this? Well, banks right now, man, and that's why I say, if you got your money in depository banks like Chase and Wells Fargo and these type of banks that's not giving you any type of interest on your money, why have your money in those banks? And because it's all digitized anyway. If they want to go in and steal your money, they can go in and steal your money. Okay? And so right now, I'm gonna give you an example of what I mean so you can kind of understand it, because you see the stuff on the television and they're talking about the banks, the Federal Reserve repoing $75 billion. You don't know what that means. Well, if they're saying the Federal Reserve is repoing $75 billion, basically what they're saying is they allowed the banks who's supposed to have a certain amount of money in the bank. But guess what they're doing? There's a system called fractional reserve. And in a fractional reserve system, banks can take all of your money up to and leave just 10% in their bank. So what they'll do is they'll take $10 million and they'll go and loan $9 million out of it, loan it to other people, right? And so, and only keep a certain amount of money in the bank, which that's all they have to do. So how do they make their money? Well, you put your money in the bank, they give you a small percentage on your money, and then the money that you put in the bank, they'll lend it out to somebody else at a higher interest rate. That's how they make their money. And so when they do that, they can get greedy sometime and overlend. And then now the money they're supposed to have in the bank, let's say I want to go get my money out the bank, it's not there. Well, instead of the banks being responsible for that, the Federal Reserve, they can just get a loan from the Federal Reserve. And so right now, $75 billion, the Federal Reserve has just printed money to give to them. Now you see how money is fraud? If the Federal Reserve can print $75 billion to give to the banks so the banks can basically have enough in there to cover the deposits and cover the withdrawals, then what's it all about? Right? Your money doesn't mean anything. Okay? And so that's why it's important that you understand the tax situation in America, that you understand how when you buy property, that how the tax situation works on that. Because if not, you're gonna get taken advantage of. All right? So if you just joined the family, I just want to kind of come up and tell you that, the banks had to bail out again. And if they're bailing out banks and throwing all this kind of money into the economy, we're not seeing it. And so we're not seeing it, then eventually what's going to happen is going to be this huge recession. And I promise you, family, a lot of people are going to be affected by it, mostly low income and middle class. And history always repeats itself, especially when you're talking about the economy, because remember, ever since the 1800s, there's been market booms and market crashes. That's how it happens. And so when you have this type of economy, then there's going to be a lot of people that lose out on it, but then there's going to be a lot of people that win too. And I'll tell you right now, family, you can be one that wins, especially since you're in the garden, because I'm giving you a prelude to what's going to happen here in the next 18 months. I'm not Nostradamus, but family, there are three markets that are propped up: the bond market, the stock market, and the real estate market, mortgage. It's all propped up by phony money. They tell you every day. So when you have markets that's propped up by phony money, they basically keeping it up until the election happens. They're not going to have the market crash or the economy crashes in this election year. You may ask yourself, Bean, how do you know that? Well, I mean, when you look at the month of August and September, and these major companies have been doing what they call stock buybacks. And if you're an investor, hey, Deborah, how you doing? If you're an investor and let's say you invested in Ford or AT&T and all these companies, right? Apple, you know, Microsoft. Well, you're probably saying, man, I'm doing well because the stock market, the prices of those stocks are continuing to rise. Well, you got to ask yourself, how is it rising if the economy isn't that great? The companies are buying back their own stocks, family. So if the company buys back their own stocks, and I'm telling you, they've been buying back stocks at a rapid pace. So that's going to boost up the stock market price, which is phony. And so here you are, totally oblivious to that, right? So what are you going to do? Continue to put your money in the stock market. Bad idea, family. Because I promise you, just like it happened in 2007, 2008 crash, this crash is going to be worse than that one. And they call that the Great Recession. What's going to happen here afterwards is going to be really bad because right now you have the mortgage market, okay? The mortgage economy. It's bad right now. The houses are already pretty much valued at its high. The prices can't do anything now but come down. All right? And so if you're buying a house right now, it's a seller's market. The stock market is propped up, okay? And then the bond market is propped up. Now, family, if you don't know what the bond market means, how I know this market is going to crash, remember, there are indicators that they have been throughout this economy to let you know when the market is going to crash. And two top indicators, and that's what I tell you, that's why I say pay yourself first. Stack that cash, because when the market crashes, you're able to put yourself in a great opportunity to gain some real assets, primarily real estate, okay, as well as some nice stocks and bonds, okay. But two main indicators to let you know this market is going to crash is one, the Federal Reserve is lowering interest rates to negative rates. That's not good, all right. Two, the bond market, what they call an inverted curve, meaning, I talked about it before, if you have a 2-year, a 5-year, and a 10-year bond, your two-year bond, you're supposed to be having a less interest in a 2-year bond than a 10-year bond. You dig? And so when you have more money, have more interest being paid on a 2-year bond opposed to a 5 and a 10-year bond, then that's an inverted bond market. That means that monies that you put into savings for bonds, you get less interest on the long term than the short term. That's not good. That's a big indicator that the market's going to recede or crash. But then, of course, market capitalization to GDP. And all that means, family, is the price of the stock market in comparison to the GDP, the gross domestic product, is off. Okay? And then a good economy, 80 to 90% stock market cap to GDP is a good ratio. But when you go on 110, 120, 130, where it is now, that's an overinflated market, meaning that eventually it has to correct itself because that's what it does. And so when you know that, then you can sit back, okay, pay yourself first, stack your cash, and then wait till the market crash. Now, unfortunately, there's going to be millions of people that's going to be affected by this. What I mean by that, foreclosures, okay? Because right now, the American public is basically leveraged to the max. What I mean by that, credit card debt, auto loans that are pretty much defaulted, mortgages that are pretty much going into default, and then of course credit cards. When you have those four domains that are pretty much leveraged to the max, and the public basically right now can't afford a $400 or $500 emergency, that's telling you right there the economy is not doing that well. And then when you talk about the job market is pretty much a facade as well, because you can say you have 130,000 new jobs, but if 25,000 of those are temporary workers, and then another 50,000 are part-time, that is a propped up market. That is a propped up employment market. So when President Trump says, we have the lowest black unemployment rate, that's the facade. That's the bull right there. Because anytime you focus on African American unemployment rate, why? When the African Americans are the most disenfranchised. I mean, look at the ones that are in prison, the ones on welfare. And what I mean by welfare, I mean generational. Okay? Talking about African American unemployment being the lowest it's been in 50 years, and then you go around the nation and you see African Americans uh, I don't see many African Americans owning a lot of different businesses, especially in the neighborhood. So that is pretty much disingenuous. That can kind of be misleading as well. All right. Okay. So that being said, family, pay yourself first, put yourself in a nice financial situation, and then kind of understand, and especially those who are working that get income, and understand what this income tax bracket has been changed since 2018. Family, if you don't know your tax bracket, if you don't know how much you're paying in taxes every year, that's something that you can do to understand that. It's called marginal tax rates and annual tax rates, or your average tax rate. They differ. And I'm gonna get into that at a later date. I want to come with a whiteboard so I can actually show you how to calculate those things and how you can benefit from them. And also, too, your tax deductions. If you're not sure about how to calculate or how to benefit from the taxes this year, look into the two main type of deductions. There are itemized deductions and standard deductions. This is information for those that will be getting ready to pay your taxes soon. And I would definitely recommend that you look into your standard deduction, because as of 2018, the tax deduction rate went up by $6,000. So if you're filing single, that's $6,000, and if you're married, that's $12,000 deduction, a standard deduction. All right. Un momento, por favor, family. Hey, I'm in the garden right now. Sorry about that, family. As I was saying, when you do your taxes this year, make sure you look over the new tax law, because right now you have a situation where I know a lot of times, if you do itemize your deductions, in the past that probably benefit you more, but now with the new tax laws, it's going to probably be beneficial for you to kind of take that standard deduction. And what I mean by that, if you make $50,000 a year, the standard deduction for a single person, if you file a single, is $6,000, right? And if you looked at in contrast to an itemized deduction, if you can't itemize and deduct things from your taxes that's going to be more than $6,000, then you might as well just take the standard deduction. Because, like I say, as in my example, if you're making $50,000, if you got a $6,000 deduction, then now your taxable income is only $44,000. All right, and so that's also something that can help you out. Now, also too, take advantage of the things that you can deduct for. There's something what they call above the line deductions. And I'm gonna kind of get into a couple of these things that you can deduct that you may not know in the past that you can deduct. And that's if you contribute to your 401k or 403b, that's deductible, right? If you contribute to what they call a health savings account, that's deductible. IRAs, an individual retirement account, if it's a traditional, not the Roth account, but the traditional, that's deductible, right? If you have a student loan and you're paying your student loan off, well, the interest that you're paying on that student loan debt, you can deduct that as well. All right. Now, back in the day, before 2018, you was able to deduct like what they call unreimbursed employee expenses, stuff that you used to use for your job that you could write off at the end of the year. You can't do that anymore. And so now you want to look into ways to try to help yourself reduce your taxable income by actually paying yourself first, in 401ks, IRAs, health savings accounts. And if you're a teacher, use that teacher expense. That's like $250 that you can deduct. All right. Remember, this type of economy, this type of system, this type of collectivism is not designed for the general public to be rich. And how do I know that? Just look how much the government designate for Social Security in your check. What government would designate only 6 or 7% when they know this is the only retirement that most people have? And right now, like I told you before, today, the average Social Security check that the government is dispersing is $1,400, $1,471. Who can live off of that? Let me see. Who's this guy here? Let's get him out of here. I don't know who it is, but we got to make sure we keep it respectful in the garden. We can't have any weeds in the garden. Jasmine, how you doing? Yeah, we can't have that, guys. We dropping knowledge, man. We got this food for thought. We can't have those in the garden. There are many other channels to choose from. You don't have to come to the garden, but if you're gonna come to the garden, make sure that you keep it respectful. I don't use cuss words. I don't do all that kind of stuff. So you have a lot of different channels that entertain that type of rhetoric. We don't do that here. All right. It's all about knowledge. It's all about common sense. If you can't come with that type of disposition, I would definitely appreciate you go ahead and move around. All right. But I digress. Family, remember, when you're doing your taxes this year, look at that standard deduction. And if you're a married couple, that's $12,000 that you can conduct from your taxable income. All right. So, I just want to come back with a little information. If you just joined me, like I said, I talked about how the Federal Reserve had just bailed out the banks again with a $75 billion repo situation. Now, the general public may think that repo meaning repossession? No, repo meaning repurchase. And all they basically did was allow the banks that has millions and millions of dollars in U.S. Treasury bonds from the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury. The Federal Reserve allowed them to repurchase those U.S. Treasury bonds by buying U.S. Treasury bonds from the banks, giving them cash, and then at a later date, have the banks go back and repurchase the treasuries. Come on, man. Prime example. I can't go to my bank and tell them, I'm gonna be short $1,000 this month. Can you guys make sure you go ahead and drop another $1,000 in my account? And next month I'll pay you guys back. We can't do that. All right? But the Federal Reserve does that to these banks. And that's why the banks are not in business to help us. Any bank that has a depository system, they only give you, on average, 10 cents on the dollar, 0.1%. And that's why I told you that in other videos about going to try to put your monies in savings account that's giving you 2% or more. You may say, well, I don't trust those banks. But you trust the banks that you're in? All right? No doubt, Texas, Alabama, boy, since 1913. But that's when the Federal Reserve system was set into place, the central banking system. But they've been doing this since the 1800s. And it's so funny that the American public, we don't come together and just squash this, because I promise you, 1 week of not buying this stuff that they sell to us will cause some major problems. But see, I go to Capitol Hill and say this, but I won't have nobody behind me. You dig? It's common sense. I mean, if you watched my video before, GE, Ben & Jerry's, Burger King, Trader Joe's, Lucky Strike, Hellman's, Vaseline, Purina, French, Budweiser, Alka-Seltzer, 7-Eleven, Gerber Baby Foods, Nestle, Firestone, John Hancock Life Insurance, Frigidaire, Holiday Inn are all foreign-owned companies. So they don't care if they lay you guys off or lay us off. They're not even from this country. So we give them all our money, opposed to, paying ourselves and putting ourselves in a better situation. Because I promise you, it's not designed, the system is not designed for us to be rich. It's designed for us to be employees. That's why we all have Social Security numbers. And that's why at 65, when we retire, there's not enough money in the Social Security to take care of us. 5 million senior citizens are living in poverty right now. Why? They've been working 30 years, 40 years, and we have senior citizens living in poverty? All right? So what that tells you, you have to invest. You have to pay yourself first. You have to get into other things that like 401ks, 403bs, IRAs. Because if not, your quality of life is going to be severely damage. And what I mean by damage, I mean you're gonna have to be choosing between prescription drugs or food. And that's the reality of a lot of senior citizens right now. Okay? And so if you're young right now, basically take advantage of working. I tell my kids at school, get a job at 16. And you work from 16 to 20 years old and put all your money in an RA, in a Roth IRA, and just watch that money rise. And I didn't say put all your money in stocks and bonds. I just said put it in an RA and watch it rise. That's tax-free money. And you do that for 30, 40 years and then see what happens when you're 59 and a half years old. See, I wish I'd have knew this 30 years ago. Okay. But guess what? I was caught up in the bread and circus, watching basketball and football every weekend. And I'll tell you right now, family, there's nothing wrong with entertaining yourself. But if you are the guy that on Saturdays you're watching college football all day, on Sundays you're watching football at 12, the 12 o'clock game from 12 to 4, and then the 3 o'clock game from 3 to 7, and then the Sunday night football game. Where is the time for you to grow? Where's the financial literacy coming into play? That's time that you can be using to reinvent yourself and build as well. Because I promise you, if you rely on Social Security alone, it's not going to happen. And like I said, on the tax situation again, just to reiterate, please, if you're not certain about your taxes at the end of the year, get a professional to check it out for you, because there are many deductions out there. Don't go ahead and spend that $50 or $60, however they're charging you, so you can get the best out of your money. You pay taxes all year, all right? And that FICA that they're taking out of your taxes for Social Security and Medicare, that's not going to help you be rich. That's not going to save you when you get 65 years old. Remember, they're telling you already that Social Security may be insolvent by the year 2034. And I'm like, wait a minute, 2034? Let me see, I'm 50. I'll be 51 here soon. It's 2019, be 2020. I may not make it. So luckily for me, I have to do other things. Because in 14 years, I'll be, 64? And by that time, they're going to raise the Social Security to 67. So by 2034, they're saying Social Security will be insolvent. How can we as a nation accept that? When the people in Hong Kong are protesting, I mean, it's violence over in the streets because they want to have freedom of speech. Over here, they're telling us that they're going to take our money that we put in every month, every check. They're going to take our money, may not be there, and we just cool with that. Okay? It's not an accident they're moving more to a cashless society. Family, we have to have some tangible assets, i.e. real estate, property. You know what I'm saying? Things that's going to be bringing in some passive income, not just depending on just the stock market. And if y'all going to be investing in companies, remember, a majority of these companies are foreign owned. So you want to make sure that any company that you invest in, they pay you dividends. You did? Don't sleep on the international market as well. See, because we get caught in this bubble, and especially when we start investing, that we only invest in American companies. Well, I mean, if you look at what I just said earlier, there's no such thing as American companies too much no more, because they're all owned by foreigners. So why sleep on foreign companies in other countries? Something called the emerging markets. All right? So you're paying yourself first. Put yourself in a situation where you can diversify your portfolio, where you're actually being able to make some money in real estate with hard assets. Get you some foreign currency. See, they don't talk about foreign currency. Okay? And then also, family, when you do invest, then that's tax-free money. And what I mean by tax-free, you're not being taxed like it's like income. Okay? When you have companies that are paying you dividends, there's something called a capital gains tax that's way lower, much lower than income tax. So rich people win. The more money you make, the more that you can, put away, and not only put it away, but you can protect it. Low income, middle income families, And individuals, it's hard to protect cash because we don't have it. It's hard to focus on it when you're working 40 and 60 hours a week, and then you focus on the bread and circus, you know, social media, professional sports, entertainment. That stuff is crap. It's all designed so that you can sit in front of the television and watch the commercials. That's why I don't monetize on my channel, because while you're in the garden, I want you to be able to just hear all the knowledge without being interrupted. Because see, that interruption is basically the advertising needed to get you to buy things. That's why the United States is the #1 consumer country in the world, but then have the most people in prison, and then have the poorest people per capita working, then have the most obese, unhealthy people in the world, and have the most people dying of cancers. It's not by accident, because those that feed us this food depend on our cognitive dissonance not to think for ourselves and use our 5 senses. There's not that many cows and chickens in America. Who told you to drink milk? The only person supposed to be drinking milk is the calves that milk is for. Cows only have milk once they have babies. So us drinking milk, that's ridiculous. Why? Because it's predictive programming. Whatever they tell you to eat and drink, you do, even though your 5 senses tell you shouldn't. Most people have lactose intolerance, but they tell you, oh, still drink the milk. That's making you lactose intolerant, but go take this medication. That'll help you. Huh? We know that the food in the fast food restaurants are poison, but we still gonna commercialize them like they're healthy. See, that's called cognitive dissonance. And then the fact that if I tell you that the average Social Security payments are $1,471, who can live off of that? And I just told you that they say that may not be there by 2034. Every time you get your check, you should be like kind of tripping, kind of pissed off, knowing that you got money coming from your check, especially if you're I'm 50. Younger people, man, think about that. And they tell you that in your face, that it may not be there, and nobody says anything. All right? So family, make sure, like I said, just join me. Like I said, I'm talking about a couple of things, how the banks, okay, are being bailed out by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is not a federal agency, part of the government. It's its own private, separate entity. Now, let me ask you this. If, like I said before, if you knew Burger King was owned by China and they changed their name to China King, would you go to Burger King, eat Whoppers if it were called China King? So why, as a country, will we let the Federal Reserve Bank tell us how much we can spend, tell us every year, well, inflation is going to be 2%. That's our target. What? But if you're telling me inflation is going to be 2% every year, okay? So in 5 years, that's 10% of inflation. My salary is not rising like that. So why, as a nation, are we letting an outside bank, a central bank, tell us that every year we have to pay 2% more on everything we buy? But we're not making a law that the companies pay us 2% raise every year. So right off the bat, you know, we're getting thrown. They taking advantage of us, but we so blind. The third eye isn't open, because if it was, I promise you, there'd be protests in the streets. But like I say, Texas and Alabama, boy said it. 1913, they started this fraudulent Reserve Bank. And the only reason they call it the Federal Reserve Bank, because they knew about calling it the Aldrich Bill, it wouldn't fly. It was only like 6 billionaires got together and said, how can we take advantage of the American people through the banking system? Wow. Start a central bank, but we can't call it a central bank. We have to do something because these people in America are pretty smart. What can we do? Bam, we'll cut the Federal Reserve. Then they'll automatically assume that it being Federal Reserve, that it's part of the federal government, which is not. Just like the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service is not a part of the government. But we don't know that. Okay. Let's get into the comments, family. Yeah, Q&A, no doubt. I got to read that comment. Seems like they had a plan which revolved around only a few reaching retirement, but new health advances have ruined that plan. Exactly. We weren't supposed to live this long. Okay. People became more health conscious and started living longer. They weren't expecting that. And so what did they do? They started giving us something called GMO. You think it's an accident the cancer rate, the diabetic rate, the high blood pressure rate is at an all-time high because people started trying to eat healthier. But guess what? Even eating healthier, they start processing the food to kill you. I mean, Monsanto, farmers don't even grow the food in America no more. And so by the age of 65, I promise you, 70 to 80% of people are going to be on some type of medication. It's not an accident that every other commercial is some type of pharmaceutical prescription drug with all of those side effects, with the actors in it just all happy. I wish one time they'll show one of those commercials where they actually have an actor in the commercial exhibit some of those side effects. You did? So, like I said, just to reiterate, banks being bailed out, family. The new tax law, the new 2018 tax law, family, make sure you look into that because there is an opportunity for you to save money in your taxes due to the new standard deduction. They raised the standard deduction to $6,000 if you file single, and it's $12,000 if you are filing married. Okay, and the reason why they did that, raised the standard deduction, because they took off everything else. Before, you was able to itemize a lot of different items to bring down your taxes, but they got rid of a lot of those things, and so you're better off basically just taking that standard deduction, right, to lower your tax. And I said before, an example from a younger audience: if you make $50,000, right, and you single, where they automatically will give you a $6,000 deduction. So now instead of you paying taxes on $50,000, you'll be paying taxes on only $44,000. Okay, and so that's still $44,000 worth of taxable income. Where how can you lower that? By paying yourself first throughout the year through what they call a health savings account, where you can put up to $3,500 in that, and if you're married, it's $7,000. Like I said, IRA, where there's additional $6,000 that you can deduct from your taxes. Student loan interest I talked about before, 401ks, 403bs. These are all items, standard, that they call above the line deductions, where if you pay yourself first, because we don't do that. Why? Because we're too busy being consumers throughout the year. There's nothing wrong with setting aside. In fact, how you do that, you set it aside before you see it, and let it be gone before you see it. You know, have those automatic transfers going to your 401ks, or going to your IRAs, and going to your student loans, so you can have that information at the end of the year, so you know exactly how much that you'll be able to get tax deducted. Because I promise you, the system isn't designed for low income, middle income people to get rich. And you're not going to be rich, or you're not going to gain any type of wealth without hard assets, tangible assets, real estate, property. And when you're buying property, family, and I talked about that earlier, but when you're buying property, understand, and those that are looking to buying a house, getting a mortgage, understand that there are three values that you need to understand the difference. And there's property value, fair market value, and the appraisal value, right? And those three values are quite different. And if you are new to the game, The property value is very, very important because that's going to tell you how much what property taxes you're going to be paying. And these property taxes you're going to pay throughout the duration of your ownership of that home. Even when you pay it off, you still going to have to pay property taxes on that home. And so that's some information that you want to kind of stay on top of. Right now, I'm in H-Town in Texas. H-Town, their property taxes are running around about 2.48% for the year, like almost $5,000 for taxes, property taxes. Oklahoma and Louisiana are some of the states that have the lowest property taxes. So if you're thinking about, buying property, buying land, you need to look into property taxes and property tax rates, because that can be a big difference in how much you pay throughout the year. Louisiana right now, their property taxes are running like 0.51%, or like $900 on like a $200,000 property, $900 a year for taxes. Like I said, in Houston, that's almost $5,000 for property taxes. So that is information that you want to be conscious of. Okay. So like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up, family. Like I say, if you're in the garden, I really appreciate you. 3 things we talked about. We talked about the banks being bailed out. Make sure you pay yourself first, family, because when this recession happens, it's going to be a great opportunity for you to be able to gain some wealth. There's going to be a huge transfer of wealth. Now, of course, we're not going to be the ones that be able to go from, ashy to classy, but we will be able to build our net worth. Okay, and I'm telling you right now, real estate is a great opportunity to build net worth, because one thing about real estate, it can not only provide you passive income, right, but it can provide you stability from a collateralized standpoint. If you need a loan, if you need anything like that, if you have assets, you can always collateralize it and make that debt good debt. You did? And also, family, we talked about the taxes and how, make sure you look at those deductions. There are a lot of deductions out there that you can take advantage of if you just understand the new tax code, all right? And make sure you take that standard deduction, because itemized deductions, unless you got a gang of change and a gang of different deductions, itemized deductions, then you're better off just taking the standard deduction. If you're single, like I said, it's $6,000. If you're married, it's $12,000, all right? Then, of course, look into maxing out those 401ks, those health savings accounts, those IRAs, and paying that student loan off, because you can deduct that interest. I think up to $2,500 in student loan interest. But every cent counts, all right? And also, family, the last thing, when it comes to your taxes, try to understand that your taxes, what you pay for the year, there are 2 different types. One called your marginal tax rate, and then you have your average tax rate. Well, your marginal tax rate is what you pay on every dollar of income that you earn. Okay, so let's say, for instance, if the bracket says like from $0 to $20,000, or the first $10,000 you don't pay taxes on. So those that have a part-time job and make only $8,000 to $9,000 a year, they're not paying taxes on that, right? But let's say you get to the $20,000 range, then of course, you start paying 10% tax on that, and then of course, when you get to the $40,000 range, you pay another 10%, and so on and so forth until you get to your max. And it's somewhat confusing, family, but I'm gonna come back with the whiteboard, because I want to illustrate that on the whiteboard. I want to illustrate how to actually be able to calculate your property taxes in advance. I want to illustrate how you'll be able to calculate your Social Security for the year in advance, and how to calculate your marginal tax rates. All right, I'm gonna come back with the whiteboard so I can illustrate that for your family. But in the meantime, between time, I really appreciate you guys joining me in the garden. Like I said, those that are on Social Security right now, my heart goes out to you, because you're only getting $1,400 a month. That's ridiculous, and the government did that on purpose. What government that loves its people will only allow its people to put back 6% for retirement, when you know that's all they have? When you know a majority of the people that's not in the private sector only getting that for retirement. You would think the younger you are, you'll be able to have more going towards your Social Security. I mean, think about it, family. I mean, if I'm 25 years old, then I'm gonna be contributing maybe 10%, 20% to my Social Security. And then the older I get, the less I will contribute. So by the time, and guys, I'm gonna come back with how to actually calculate that. And if some of you guys are pretty math inclined, just real quick, how much money you make, you multiply that by 0.062%, and then it gives you how much money you paying into Social Security. So it's 0.062%. So if you make $10,000, right, then that's 10,000 times 0.062. That tells you how much you're going to your Social Security. Okay, what's that? $620 out of $10,000. You did, and so you would think that the government would set up a retirement system for its civilians, for its people, where with the older they get, they have more money. So you have the money for the prescription drugs. You have the money to sustain the quality of life. You know, you have senior citizens right now, family, that had a great quality of life in their 20s and 30s and 40s, right? Then they retired. And once they got in the 60s and retired, the quality of life went backwards because the money wasn't there, right? So, I mean, think about that. Being able to contribute as much as you want to Social Security and Medicare, right? And then when you get 65 years old, now you can feel comfortable knowing that, okay, I'm okay. You did? So, family, like I said, thanks for joining me in the garden. I just want to come back with a little food for thought. And like I said, I'm going to come back with the whiteboard. So Professor Bean will be having the illustrations going on for you, family. And in the meantime, between time, may the Most High inside you bring you joy. Jazz, Q&A News, Texas, Alabama, boy. AA Black Pistol, Marcus. Thanks for joining. And being with us out of 5,000.